House Energy Policy Committee will come to order. Mr. Clerk, if you would, please call the roll.
Chairman Glenn? Here. Representatives Hout? Barrett? Here. Cole? Tedder? Here. Molino? Here. Farrington?
Here.
Griffin? Johnson?
Here.
Lefebvre? Lauer?
Here.
Riley?
Here.
Lisinski?
Here.
Dianda?
Here.
Garrett? Camilleri? Elder?
Here.
Green?
Here.
Sneller?
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Representative Barrett makes a motion we approve the minutes of the last meeting without objection, so ordered. Members of the committee, I had told some of you we were not going to have a hearing today, so I apologize for the last-minute change of plans, but I got phone calls on the way home Thursday as TV stations across the state did stories about dramatically increased bills. I was getting calls from members asking what the House Energy Policy Committee was doing about this, and the result was, since we still had the window of opportunity and our scheduled subject was canceled or at least postponed, we called this hearing to give citizens an opportunity. And the first person we're going to hear from, courtesy to her schedule, is Representative Michelle Hoytinga. So, Representative Hoytinga, if you would come forward, you know the drill, the red button. We look forward to hearing your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. Put my glasses on. Thank you for the opportunity to represent the people of the 102nd District, which includes Wexford, Osceola, and Mecosta counties. I will be brief and to the point. I have been contacted over 200 times by constituents who are concerned, angered, and devastated by the high utility bills they have received from certain energy providers. So I would be remiss not to use this opportunity to speak on their behalf. I have heard the energy providers' explanations of below average extremely cold temperatures. And while we all agree with the frigid weather conditions, I must ask, is there something more happening? Why are some bills within normal range, yet others have skyrocketed without explanation? I am not gullible or easily swayed by memes or fake news, nor am I an IT professional. But I have read some smart meter editorials. It is possible in extremely cold temperatures for electronics to register various errors of their internal components and have difficulty executing a number of processing functions. Could this be happening with smart meters in these extreme weather conditions? I have also heard speculations that the rates are due to lack of competition. Is this a component? Or worse, is this the sole reason for the high rates? Or is it a combination of all of the above? We are just looking for an answer. The people who I represent want to know. These are low-income and middle-class families. These are small businesses. These are elderly who are on fixed incomes. So today, let's ask the tough questions of our providers. I then urge this committee to follow through to help us find some solutions so that Michiganders across the state can afford to heat their homes. Thank you.
Questions for Representative Hoytinga? Representative, I have a question. Do you have any indication that this is just limited geographically? Representative Aller this morning caught me coming in and said at her office hours on Friday that she had a lot of complaints about the same thing. So is it just a northern Michigan thing as far as you know?
I would like to know that today, and that's why I'm going to be intensely listening. I would say being contacted 200 times was a very modest number. I've probably been contacted through social media, phone calls, coffee hours. I have just been blown up by this. It is the #1 topic in my district, in my 3 counties.
Okay. Representative Deanda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate you being here to testify today, fellow representative. You know, I got a couple questions I have, because we do have concerns in all of the areas of Michigan with power and the cost of electricity and where we're going with it. And one of the things, you know, that we run into a lot of times is that we find a lot of people out there that are using a lot of energy in the wintertime because they don't even understand that they're using that much. And I think that's a discussion that we have at a lot of our coffee hours when we talk to our constituents in the north, because they're using more hot water, because if they have an electric hot water tank, they're drawing longer on that process to get it through a cold basement. I find a lot of folks that are, having their furnaces that are, being ran a lot in this cold temperature. And I think that it's a discussion for a lot of us out there as elected officials to be able to see how we can improve the quality of their life, and being able to look at measures to be able to not just insulation, but in some of the applications that they're doing, because there are a lot of folks that are very surprised out there. And have you been getting those? That's my question to you. When you have these constituents, are they asking you about energy consumption with electric hot water tanks, that they're drawing more water and they're running it longer? So I guess that's my question to you. Are they having specifics on it, or is it just, are they talking about, thinking that the bill is that high in certain situations? My second question, if I may, Mr. Chair, is a lot of people that say, that they have tried the reduction in their household. I had one of my constituents that, the kids moved out, went to college, and he was really wondering why the bill didn't come down. And I asked, did you unplug the refrigerator, the freezer? Are you still, utilizing that home? And I think that's the other question, is that we really got to dive into, when people are saying about these energy bills too, what's the situation in that household? Thank you, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman. That's the question I have for you, Rep, and I appreciate you.
I absolutely agree, and I was just talking with one of the energy providers earlier before this started, and often they do go to the home and they're telling me there was a problem that they found, or an issue that they found. So these are the tough conversations that I'm having, but the amount of people who are complaining, I am a first-term legislator, but I don't want to put that to naivety either. The amount of people who are complaining, and some of them are doctors, lawyers, small businesses. These are some pretty intelligent people who are coming to me and saying something's wrong here. So that's when I'm really perplexed by this.
Any other questions? Representative, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
We now have something queued up, and this is just one of numerous. There may be ones I'm not aware of. I was interviewed last week by a TV station from Traverse City. This one happens to be from my constituency, a gentleman from Sanford, Michigan. If we can show that, because after we show it, we have to change up the microphones to allow for further witnesses. So if you would go ahead and run this.
Still, but getting them to admit to it's going to be a whole different ballgame.
Questions about sky-high utility bills. We are following up with one man who says he saw a big difference after Consumers Energy paid him a visit.
A lot of you have complained to us about your Consumers Energy bill, especially the electric part of it. A Midland County man believes he has proof that his smart meter wasn't working right.
ABC 12's Terry Camp has our story.
Workers for Consumers Energy have been to Jeremy Iafredi's Sanford house twice now. A company spokesperson says it appears the smart meter is working okay. They came to the house to see why Iafredi's bill skyrocketed to more than $700 in December and then more than $1,000 in January, mainly because of electric costs. A typical wintertime bill for him would be around $250. Consumers Energy says the cold weather caused the spike. Iafredi suspected the recently installed smart meter is a problem. He says a utility company visited his house in late January and suggested he unplug an older refrigerator to see if that was the problem. They returned last Monday.
They said that the fridge that they had me unplugged didn't do anything. It didn't change the energy usage at all, and they were kind of stumped.
But Iafredi says just after the crew left last Monday, he says his electrical usage dropped dramatically. Logging into his consumer's account online, the constant 8-kilowatt readings were gone. Electrical usage in the house was much lower, without much change in the outside temperature.
I don't know if they had adjusted something or they recalibrated something or what.
A Consumers Energy spokesperson tells us the smart meter was checked and is working just fine. The company plans on doing an energy audit on the home. Iafredi is paying his natural gas part of the bill, but the company says he doesn't have to pay electric for now. He says he's doing everything he can to lower his bill.
I don't think it'll make much of a difference at all. I do feel it's the meter still, but getting them to admit to it's going to be a whole different ballgame.
In Midland County, Terry Camp, ABC 12 News.
Okay, thank you.
Stay warm and shop indoors. It's Vic Hanover Chevrolet's winter sales event. So come on in, kick the tires, and pop the hood. We make car buying easy.
Vic Canover will appreciate the free plug.
Kurt Berryman here today, Mr. Chair?
Kurt Berryman, are you here in the audience? I don't know if anybody's been following these Facebook posts, but there have been numerous posts like that where people have shown their increase or decrease. And this guy was dramatic. And there was one case where somebody was in arrears and had a $1,700 bill that they posted a picture of. But in this case, there was no mention of that. He goes from $250 to $700, then to $1,000, and then has this dramatic drop. So this is the context in which we're having this hearing today. And I've had people who wanted to testify ask me, what's of good use to the committee other than just saying my electricity bill's too high? Well, that kind of documentation would be of good use. If you can show, in fact, somebody told me on the elevator they had measured, and maybe they'll testify, I hope they put in a card, about having a year ago, having all three of their adult children and their families with them for an extended period. Same type of temperatures this year, dramatically increase in their electricity bill, even though now it's back down without that extended family present in the home. So I hope that person will come testify. But that's the kind of thing I think would be valuable, is some kind of documentation, just not that we think our bills are too high. We have signed up to testify, and I'll call up, and we're going to have somebody from Consumers Energy up in just a minute as well. But Thomas Ehrig of Commercial and Industrial Customer Legacy Energy. Mr. Ehrig.
Thank you for allowing me to address the audience today. And I guess based on the videotape and based on what I would like to say is I want to focus on the accountability of the utilities and on the ability to respond to the questions that we are continuously asking the utilities on why our utility bills are high. So I will speak on a couple examples of the lack of accountability or the lack of response that we're getting from the utilities when we are asking for the appropriate questions that we should be asking when our utility bills are high. So I'll just give you a couple examples, and to start off, Representative Glenn, on my particular utility bill at my house, my January 2008 bill was $246 at my residence, and in 2018 it is $426. So that's a substantial increase over a 10-year period, and it amortizes over a 10-year period of a 7% increase each year, year on year. Some of the customer service issues that we've actually addressed, and when I say we have addressed, I represent commercial and industrial customers throughout the state of Michigan, both in Consumers Energy and Detroit Edison service territory. And we've asked a number of times on the secondary meters to be able to utilize the data coming from the smart meters to understand how we're using the energy, similar to that residential customer that you just saw on the video who was able to go online. The secondary customers don't have that ability, and we've asked how can we utilize the data so that we can lower our energy bills. And we've asked 5 times, and we have not have any answers from the utilities. And another situation where we're actually trying to manage our energy, and holistically we're talking about high energy bills here, and I don't want to take too much time up, but there's mechanisms for managing the energy, and one of those is, and if you're on an interruptible rate, you can actually start your generators during times of great need, and this would be a summer, not a winter need. And however, we cannot get the information from the utility prior to the interruption on how much they're going to charge us for buying through that electricity. We've asked a number of times, and we cannot do that. So the commercial and industrial customers are doing everything they can to lower their energy bills, but they're not getting the cooperation or the accountability from the utilities. So that's my message today, is it's a two-way path here, and the utilities are not supporting the commercial and industrial customers.
Mr. Eric, do you represent commercial and manufacturing customers? Is that
Throughout
your role?
Throughout Michigan, throughout the United States.
So how does this compare to other states, this situation? Is it happening everywhere?
The high utility bills? No. Matter of fact, surprisingly enough, in January of this year in Ohio, I just bought electricity for 4.9 cents for a large industrial customer for a 3-year contract, and I did the comparison for a typical customer here in Michigan on a similar rate with similar load profile, and they're paying about 2 cents higher at around 6.9 cents for their power supply portion of the.
So 50% higher, if I heard you?
About 50% higher.
Okay. Vice Chair Lisinski.
Yes, I wanted to get a little bit better understanding of the idea of data prior to interruption. I'm assuming that's to decide if the small business or industrial customer would prefer to use a generator versus purchasing at a higher rate versus being interrupted. So how many times have your customers been interrupted, had their power supply interrupted in Michigan?
How many times have they been requested to be interrupted? I guess I'd say generally speaking, last year and the year before, it was once or twice. They've been asked to run their generators. They've chosen not to run their generators and just do buy-through costs from the utility, and they do not. So then they get the bill after the fact. And so what we're, as their consultant, we're telling them, you need to be very careful because energy prices are going up, and one of these times you're going to get your bill and it's going to be a substantial bill after the fact. And so we're telling him he needs to know before the interruption. So they've been requested to be interrupted a number of times in the past 2 summers.
So if I may, so for the year, my understanding of that rate is they're getting a lower rate than other customers who choose not to be asked to interrupt their power.
There is a discount associated with the interruptible rate, correct.
And based on your analysis so far, has that played out still in the benefit of your customers or the customers that you're working with to be on the interruptible rate and then to choose either not to run their generator or to choose to continue to operate during that time over the course of a year? If they're asked once.
In the last 2 summers, correct. They've benefited by buying through that cost because it was less than their cost of running that generator. But the analysis is after the fact, not before the fact. And so that's what we're trying to do now is before they are asked to interrupt, you ask what the market-based rate is for buy-through, and we have not received an answer for that.
Okay, so they've benefited over the course of the year, and then in these cases, it's turned out to be to their benefit to make the decision they made. They made the right decision not to turn on their generators. But your point is that they don't have the data to knowingly know if they have made that correct decision in the moment. But to this point, it has always been the correct decision.
Absolutely in the past, but the future, we do see issues going forward, as we all in this room know that there's capacity issues and supply issues that may be rearing their ugly heads going forward. And that's what we try to prevent for our clients is to prevent those particular situations. And so just to give you a comparable example of a customer in Ohio where we have sensors on all their equipment inside the meter, we are able to look at and exactly determine what pieces of equipment are running inside that facility, and on a dashboard see when they shut equipment off exactly how much they're going to be reducing as far as their electricity concerned for demand response program.
But you're not here saying currently that your industrial customers are being charged inappropriate amounts for the electricity that they're using. That is not your testimony today.
I'm here to tell you that there's no accountability on the utility side for managing energy appropriately on behalf of consumers and industrial customers in the state of Michigan.
Mr. Ehrig, our policy advisor tells me that DTE has some type of measurement mechanism that does provide this in-the-moment reading, so you could make those, if you had the option of buying from DTE.
Primary customers. For primary customers, you do have information that you can get instantaneous feedback, correct?
Tell us what a primary customer is.
Primary, there's two different rate classes for commercial and industrial customers, secondary rates and primary rates. Primary rate would be a rate where the consumer or the customer owns the transformer. Secondary rate is where the utility owns the transformer. And on secondary rates, even though you have smart meters, we have been unable to utilize that data coming off of smart meters to do what we do on the primary rates. And primary is traditionally larger customers. Secondary are the smaller commercial customers.
Are you aware of any technological reason why the same ability to measure would not be available for secondary users as opposed to primary?
We are asking those questions and not receiving answers. That's my issue right now.
Okay, the consumers, folks, if you would make note of that question and consider it asked, maybe we can get an answer to it here today. Vice Chair Hauk.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. The one thing is, I can't see over Jim Mauer's head. There I am. There you go, Jim.
Representative Lower has to get lower.
The one thing, say that the Michigan, we changed everything in Michigan and we went to the Ohio model, right? So would the company that was selling me my electricity, that would be their Consumers Power or DTE, would they switch the meter out? If I had a smart meter, would they put a different meter in, or would the meter stay there?
The meter would stay there, and I'll talk about innovation because competition creates innovation. And in this particular customer I was talking about, where we have a dashboard and we can identify it, we have pulses off of the meter, utility meter. That's still the utility meter, but we're now receiving pulses from that utility meter that allows us to sit there and say what our total utility bills for that meter. And then as we drop pieces of equipment off during times of demand response, and then we see.
No, I understand the technology, but I think some folks in here think the problem is the smart meters aren't working correctly. So even if we did have choice in Michigan, the person would still have the smart meter. The smart meter would not be replaced, right?
Correct.
Okay, and then the gentleman from Sanford who had his chart all looked out about how his electricity, whatever, now he got that off a smart meter. He didn't get that off an analog meter, right?
So
if he had an analog meter, he wouldn't have had the data to find out how his bill was being spent, right?
The smart meters do give good information on behavioral changes as far as electricity pricing signals, yes.
That's it. But we're not sure whether what the spike is yet, because we have to hear from consumers and see if it was. Do you think it could have been the smart meters?
Do I believe it could be the smart meters?
Yeah.
I'm not in a position to answer that question.
Okay,
at
nope, that's
this
fine.
point.
I understand that.
I'm in the position of gathering the data and analyzing it, and the smart meters should be able to give us that data, I guess, if it.
So it's like anything else, information, the more information you can get on a topic, the better off we are.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hauk, and hopefully we are going to get answers and learn more during the hearing than we knew before the hearing. And I think a lot of people feel like they're not in a position to ask and get those answers. One of our colleagues told me that just for the experience, last night he called up the customer service line, I think it was DTE, just to see what it was like to go through the process of having new service, et cetera, and said it was less than impressive how much time it took him just to get the name right, the account right, et cetera. Representative Elder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, sir. Thank you for coming to testify today. Just so that I understand, who is your employer?
My employer, I work for the Legacy Energy Group. I'm an energy consultant managing commercial and industrial customers throughout the United States and Canada.
Okay. And the Legacy Energy Group, what is their business model? How do they make their money?
How do we make our money? We're consultants, so we charge our commercial industrial customers to manage their energy for them.
Okay. And is it based upon being able to reduce rates?
We do analytical comparison for savings and management of, in regulated states, we manage energy efficiency programs and lowering their energy bills.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Elder. I'm sorry, Representative DeAnda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your testimony today here, sir. My question is, have you ever made a formal complaint with the Public Service Commission on your findings?
Yes, I have. In the past, I have made formal complaints to the Michigan Public Service Commission, yes.
But on this current topic that you're telling us here today, have you made a complaint on this, that you're not getting
I don't know
your...
if we've gone through the formal complaint process yet. To tell you the truth, we try not to get to that point of a formal complaint. We try to resolve it through other mechanisms before the formal complaint process. That is a mechanism of last resort as we choose to use that. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Any further questions? If not, sir, thank you for your testimony today. We have William Bathgate, Pinckney, Michigan. Have we got him set up to make a presentation? Where's our technical staff?
I can go and try to find it.
Yeah. Please. Mr. Bathgate, if you don't mind, we'll let somebody else come up until we've got you set up. John Kurjewski, Indian River.
I only need like 30 seconds, and nobody has addressed this issue. I originally paid the fees to keep the analog meter. And through the MPSC, I found out that we are allowed by law to read our own meters. I contacted consumers. They did send me the cards. I am now reading my own meter, and they are still charging me a meter reading fee. And I called them and said, seeing as how I am now reading my own meter, I don't think it's fair that you are still charging me a meter reading fee. And they said, well, that fee is not technically, I says, no, wait. I says, that says right on my bill, meter reading fee, $9.72. So that's my question.
John, I'm going to take the opportunity, since you are a participant, we've talked about this opportunity on the part of consumers in the past, but you actually have cards from Consumers Energy?
And I am currently reading my own meter.
So they have an established program where they allow you to read your own meter. They send you the cards.
That's correct.
With
and
instructions.
Prepaid, with a prepaid envelope and a card so I can fill it out where the dials are pointing to, and I send it in, and they give me a schedule on what date every month to read it.
And is sending it in by mail the only option they allow you? Or could you do some other
I'm not aware, but I know I have heard about that the way I'm doing it. So I approached them, and they sent me the cards, and now I'm trying to get them to eliminate the fee because I'm reading it. And they're still charging me. Why? They're not sending a person out to read my meter. I'm reading it, and I'm sending the cards in.
So you're self-reading and still being charged. That's your
Yes.
complaint. Okay. We'll add that to the list of things we'll ask consumers to address. Vice Chair Houck.
Thank you, Chairman.
Excuse me, John.
John, stay put there.
Thanks. Right here, John.
Oh, hi.
Thanks for coming down today. So was your bill more this month than it was last month?
Oh, I have an analog meter.
Oh, okay.
I've had one since 2015.
Okay.
I paid the $72 or $79 to keep that analog and a $9.72 per month charge to have a meter reader come out and read the meter, of which I am doing myself now.
And you have consumers or DTE?
Consumers.
Consumers. Okay, thanks, John.
Yeah, I believe it's the case that consumers offers that program, but DTE does not currently, does not have the self-read program. Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So consumers have said one of the reasons for the spike in prices is due to the very cold weather we've had. The argument being on the other side is that it's due to the smart meter. You're saying you have not seen a spike and you have an analog meter. That's correct?
That's correct.
So that would kind of go counterintuitive to what they have been arguing.
My bills have been consistent, and I've lived at that location for 10 years now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Appreciate your
committee.
testimony. Mr. Bathgate, we apparently are not going to be able to put it up on the big screen behind you, but we do have it on the television so that members of the committee can see your presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
You bet.
So I'll be real quick. I've been here before. For those of you who are not aware,
and Mr. Bathgate, if this is your presentation, is that correct?
Sure.
So every member of the committee also has it in print in front of them.
and there's a backup study that's companies that supports that. So the smart meters have a switch mode power supply, which creates what we like to call harmonics or transients, and that is installed in the meter per the block diagram I've given you here in advance of the current and voltage sensors, which they call the Hall effect sensor. So whatever output of that switch mode power supply is feeding to the current sensors and the voltage sensors of the meter. Okay, and that's an important thing. I'm going to explain why. So this is an oscilloscope graph. I have all this equipment. I have oscilloscopes, spectrum analyzers. I have all kinds of digital stuff. I do have an increased build in the last few months. I do have an opt-out meter on my home. Smart meter, opt-out meter. So in my home, I see a 16-volt peak-to-peak transient on top of the normal 60-cycle voltage sine wave that I see, that we all have grown to know, right? It's 120 volts sine wave. So the yellow lines is off my oscilloscope. That's transients, okay, that are above 60 hertz, but it injects additional voltage. So if you are not familiar with electricity, basically your 120 volt cycle, it's not 120 top, not 120 bottom. It's 167 overall, peak to peak. And when I measured my house, and this was, I made sure the heat was off. I just left the refrigerator on and a couple light bulbs. I measured the voltage transients, and I got 16 volts peak to peak on top of my already existing 120 volts. And you'll notice the yellow lines are out of phase. They're not in the same curve. So this is injecting additional sensors that are sensing that basically there's more voltage than I'm actually using, because I can't use this yellow line. My appliances only run from the 60 cycle. So the sensors in the meter are seeing voltages that I can't consume, but it sees and counts. My bill's up about 15%, which is kind of consistent with what this voltage transient looks like. Okay. Now, Representative Lauer, when Linda Kurtz was here last time, you asked her a question and said, I've got a charger and I've got a TV and I've got all this other stuff. Why don't I see transients from the switch mode power supplies on those devices? Well, it's because the industry causes them to put what they call an EMC filter in there. It prevents these transients from backfeeding onto the 110 volt, 120 volt line. So it stops it. Okay. But that's not in the smart meter. They never put this in. They didn't feel they had to because there was nobody to force them. But now you have a switch mode power supply which is injecting all those transients throughout the entire house. Okay. So we've all been told the meters are really accurate. They're more accurate than the old meters, right? Well, I've been looking very closely at what the American National Standards Institute uses for measuring meters. I'm finding very interesting things. So if you hit the bullseye 1 out of 100, according to ANSI, your meter is accurate. They never mention precision. Does it repeat time after time? They don't even talk about it. Okay, I find it very interesting. Now, the analog meters that we've had for all these years, right, they've been relatively repeatable, and I think the last testimony you heard looks like that, right? I mean, all the evidence is such. So I find it interesting that the ANSI is basically an industry-funded group. It's not a federal charged standards institute, okay? NIST is a national federal standards institute, not ANSI. I was stunned to find this out, okay? Because I've been doing testing for high voltage transients like surges coming from the power lines and causing the meters to fail. And so in that testing that I've been doing, I'm looking at the results. ANSI says it passes the high voltage transient test. When I do it, it fails. And I come to find out the ANSI standard allows the meter manufacturers to take the electronics out of the meter while they do the test. Like, what? I was stunned to find this out, okay? Now, you heard the previous testimony of the gentleman that was complaining about his bill, and suddenly the thing started going down. What happened? Well, it all depends on how you count things, right? If I do averages, your electric meter should be just like your gas pump, right? You pump your gas for a minute, stop running, stop pumping for another minute. Pump for another minute, stop, leave it off for 2 minutes. Okay, so you do this over and over again. What you're going to think you got, according to the way the meters are being measured on peaks versus the actual totalizing, they'll think that you've been pumping gas at a rate of 5 gallons a minute. You do it for 30 minutes, you just let it pause. They're going to spread that over that 30 minutes, you're going to wind up with a higher bill. So suddenly, this gentleman, who has no control over how that electric meter counts things, suddenly saw his bill go down because he complained. I wonder if everybody complained, the bills would go down. Why? Because the electronics calculation is at the control of the utility, not the consumer. So, summarizing this, every consumer is at the total mercy of the utilities. The old analog meters, you can see, well, they gave me a reading that was really high. Let me go out to the side of the house and go look at the dials and see if it's right. If it's right, it's right. This thing, you have no clue. They could send you a bill tomorrow for $1,000 and say you owe it, or we're going to shut you off. There's no transparency. You have no idea if this is working or not working. Okay? In the study, the additional study I provided to you, you can see even the electronic meters, when they're subjected to transient voltages, are inaccurate by as much as 10% or more. Okay? I went to Maple Theater in Bloomfield Township yesterday or Sunday. Their transient was 40 volts. I'll bet their electric bill is through the ceiling. So there's something going on here. And you would need a laboratory to figure it out, but guess what? The utility trucks come out and you say, I got a complaint. They come out and they look at the meter, they stare at it and go, well, I think it's okay. They haven't got a clue. They don't have an oscilloscope in the truck. Okay? Much less somebody that knows how to run one. Okay? So basically, my complaint is basically I'm getting high bill, but I have sensors in my house. I can tell why it's high and what's causing it to be high. Okay? And I can tell you from what I know in my personal home that when I'm seeing a high bill from is from the transient voltages, not my appliances. Okay? I have natural gas heat. The only thing electric I've got is refrigerator and light bulbs and a TV set. That's about it. But I got a 15% higher bill. You know, I got a boiler. It doesn't use electricity. So, you know, if I had a forced air fan system, I guess I would see some electricity usage, but I don't have that. So, and I've gone to many other homes and I've seen anywhere from 24 to 36 volts transient voltages on the line introduced by the switch mode power supply. There's something wrong.
Mr. Bathgate, give us some idea of your professional background as to why
I'm an electrical engineer. I've been in the industry for over 40 years, previously employed by Emerson Electric. built power supplies, built power switching, high current power switching systems for utilities and for buildings, industrial buildings. Been doing it for a long time. So I'm now retired.
Thank you, sir. Representative Riley.
Thank you. Yeah, I just had a question. Is it possible to put an analog meter in series with the digital meter to see if they vary, the results vary?
Yes. And that has, yes, it has been proven to be different. In California, they did a test. They found a 10% error on the electrical meter.
Have you yourself, have you tried this or no?
Not yet. This, the house I'm living in is, I don't own the house, but I'm renting it right now, and I have another home I'm building. When I'm finished with that building, it will have an analog meter in series with the electric meter from DTE, and I will be able to check to see if DTE is cheating me or not.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, sir. Have you been able to look at an older analog meter home like the gentleman that testified before you and see if his voltage spiked?
There aren't any.
Okay.
There's no electronic components in the meter, and I've measured my own old analog meter. There was never any transients.
So those transients are, by your experience, only in the digital meters, whether
Correct.
they are smart meters
in
or
either
not.
the opt-out or the not opt-out.
Right, because they're the digital kind.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative DeAnda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your testimony today, sir. I got a question when you mentioned about your heat source. You're saying that you have a boiler system, but it doesn't have any power to it. So is it a freestanding type of boiler system? There's no circulating pump at all on it?
No circulating pump.
Okay. So it's totally efficient on just on the water.
It's nice.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bathgate. No further questions. Appreciate your testimony. Can somebody tell me where Worth Township is? Which county? Anybody know? I received an email from Worth Township showing that they got a bill for $10,000.
It wasn't worth it.
Yeah. They got a $10,000. Then Channel 12, Sanilac County. Anyway, and they provide photocopies of the bill here. One is for $10,000, and then Channel 12, WJRT, the same station that did the one about the guy in Midland, did a news story, and they received a corrected bill to a little over $200. So $10,000 bill, and then a $200 and something bill after WJRT did a story about them having Worth Township having received a $10,000 bill. I'll forward this to members of the committee because they have the actual photographs of the bills. Next up, Genevieve Marnon. Ah, okay. Welcome, Ms. Marnon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm the gal on the elevator. I had no intentions of coming here to testify today, but I came into the office couple weeks ago and was whining about my bill to my boss, and he says, you know, they're having this energy committee, and he goes, you want to go over and listen in? I'm like, yeah, I'll go listen, you know, because I didn't bring my bills or anything else, but I'll tell you what I did. My bill went up, like, substantially, and so I pulled all my bills for the last 3 years, and I laid them all out. We've been in our house for 3 years, to look at whether or not there was a rate increase or a usage increase, because there's a difference, and it has been cold, and I wanted to make sure we weren't just using more. But a year ago right now, I had my entire family, my adult children and their families, all living under the same roof with me. So we had 7 adults and 3 children under 3 living in my home. We have a 2-story house, 4,000 square feet, with 2 separate furnaces. Now, mind you, the kids were home all day, so the furnace we kept the heat at 71 degrees because we had kids home. We also had cooked more laundry, more baths, you name it, we used it. PlayStations, cell phones, you name it, it was being used. Fast forward to 1 year, it's just empty nesters now, my husband and me. We turned off the upstairs furnace. I mean, we turned it way down to like 50 degrees, just us cooking and bathing and everything else. And our bill was higher. than it was last year. Now it's been colder, so I looked at the usage, not just the rate. And apparently we're using more energy this year than we were last year. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm not an expert like your last testifier. Sorry, that's my cell phone because I didn't turn it off. Fun ring, though. I have my own expertise. It's not in energy use. I'm not following any of this. I'm just here to give you information. You guys can do with it what you want. I will tell you that they did replace my meter with a smart meter. I was a little concerned about the whole idea of the smart meter because of all the things that you've just heard, but I thought, well, this is good. It's technology. We don't have to send a guy out to do the meter reading. It should actually result in a lower bill, right? Because they have less cost. But ultimately it didn't. So I have to think that there's something. I mean, my husband and I literally went around the house and looked to see if there's a leak someplace or something's running, something weird, something shorting out, because this was ridiculous. We have a 5-star energy efficient home, and our energy bills have gone up. And it says the usage, not just the rate, but the usage has gone up. And that seems absolutely impossible given our dramatic change in family dynamic in the last year. So I just wanted to let you know, share with you. I can get my bills and share them with the chairman. I didn't bring them with me because I wasn't planning to testify, but I thought I would share that fun story with you. And by the way, I live in Perry, so it's not just northern Michigan. This is right by Lansing. I'm 20 minutes away. So anyway, thanks.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Martin? If not, thank you for your testimony. Well, I know it's not just northern Michigan. I got interviewed last week by a Traverse City station. We've seen references to 2 stories by WJRT, which is the Flint area. Facebook pages, there's one called AskMidland.com that has got hundreds of posts from people posting copies of their bills with similar complaints, and shouldn't be a surprise that we are reactive when a lot of people are concerned about a particular issue. We now have Lauren Snyder, Vice President, Customer Experience, and Amy Walt, Executive Director of Customer Operations for Consumers Energy. Don't have anybody else with cards. If there's anybody else who wants to testify, you need to put a card in. But we have 35 minutes that we can take to hear from Consumers Energy and any questions that committee members may have. So, ladies, if you would, please proceed.
Good morning, Chairman Glenn, Vice Chair Lazinski, and Vice Chair Hauk. My name is Lauren Youngdahl Snyder. I am the Vice President of Customer Experience at Consumers Energy, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here today to testify. My role at the company is to ensure that we're delivering a consistent end-to-end experience for our customers. I have responsibility for customer programs that include energy efficiency, renewable energy. I'm also responsible for our customer research, marketing, our digital customer experience, also known as our website or self-service channel, and a new team which is our customer experience design. I'm a Jackson, Michigan native, born and raised in this great state, and I've spent my entire life here. I've been with Consumers Energy my entire career, which began in 2004. I've had the privilege to serve our 6.7 million customers throughout my career in various positions, including roles in meter reading, in the contact center, as a part of the Smart Energy program, in policy and research, and in regulatory affairs. It's through these experiences, especially my customer-facing experiences, that I feel uniquely qualified to be here today to talk with you about the impact that the cold weather has had on our customers and the high bills that they're experiencing. Because they're not just customers, there are families, there are friends, and there are neighbors. My office is next to one of our contact centers, and since I spent time in one of our contact centers, I will always have a special place in my heart for my coworkers there. And I wish you could have been with me. I was there yesterday. If you would just be within the walls of Consumers Energy, where our contact center is, you would see and you would feel the passion that our coworkers have for our customers. And I know you're frustrated, and I appreciate the customers who've been here because it helps bring added perspective for me, because the voice of the customer is very important in the work that we do. But I know that you're frustrated, but our team members are more frustrated because we are doing everything that we can to help serve our customers. Customers have had sticker shock, there's no doubt. I have too. When I open my energy bill, it's surprisingly higher than the past. And I think back on the last few months when I've hosted family gatherings over the holidays, when we've had school snow days and the kids are home, and just dealing with the frigid cold temperatures, I myself understand where our customers are coming from because I'm experiencing it too. We do our best at Consumers Energy to anticipate our customer needs, and we're trying to get better at this every single day. In early November, we began proactive outreach to our customers because we knew that this cold weather was coming. We were telling customers, we're forewarning them to expect colder temperatures, but more importantly, to know that we are there to help them. We are literally a phone call away because we want to help our customers and we want them to know that. Over the last several weeks, we have taken calls from our customers around high bills, but of note, it's less calls than we've taken historically, and especially last year. When you compare this year to last year, it's less calls. But I want to assure you that we are keeping a very strong pulse on what our customers are saying. Amy Walt, my colleague here, who runs our customer operations group, and I participate on what we call a daily operating review. In this review, we look at all sorts of metrics, but most importantly, the number of calls coming in each day, the reasons for the calls. Are they being resolved to the customer's satisfaction, amongst a whole host of other things? I share this with you to let you know that we're keeping a very strong pulse, and it's two-pronged. We're looking at the customer experience and ensuring the accuracy of our meters and our bills. We have done our research, we've done our homework, and the data has made apparent that there are a few reasons why our customers are experiencing higher bills as of late. The first is the cold weather. So I know we've talked about this, but let me reinforce some points here. These cold snaps have kept our furnaces running on overdrive, and they're using more energy. Our team, my colleagues, have done a really great job of keeping up with the demand to ensure that our customers stay warm during these cold spells. Let me offer some perspective. This last December was the coldest December that we've had in a decade, and that includes 2 polar vortexes. Additionally, when you look at the last decade in December, we typically see 3 days where the temperature is below 10 degrees. This last December, we had 8 days where the temperature was below 10 degrees. That's more than double. Now let's talk about January. This recent January was the coldest January since 2014. And there were 10 days where the high temperature was below 20 degrees. I think about it similar to when I drive my car across the state of Michigan versus driving to run a local errand. The same is true for our furnaces. They are using more energy. They're using more natural gas than they were a year ago. For households that we serve, the January data has told us that we're seeing an uptick of 38% of natural gas use. And when you look at the winter months, we're seeing an uptick of 18%. So the bottom line is we are experiencing a winter of above average energy use due to the cold weather. Now for our electric customers, many homes use electric heat component or supplemental space heating, and that's driving an increase in their bills. Because we all know that the furnace requires the blower to work, and the blower uses electricity to work. Same is true for other supplemental heating devices, such as fireplace inserts and wood-burning heaters. They rely on blowers to work, and they work because of electricity. At the end of the day, households vary in how they use energy. I promise that the way that I use energy, the appliances in my home, the size of my home is different than every single one of you on this committee. That's why it's so important that we look at each of the customer issues that we're hearing on a one-to-one basis, because it's so different. We want to be able to help diagnose, understand what's driving those costs so that we can offer solutions so our customers can save money. That's why we've been promoting energy efficiency programs and continue to do so. The second reason, so that was the cold weather, the second reason is around a longer billing cycle. In December, we saw a 35-day billing cycle. Our typical billing cycle is 30 days. The reason for the difference had to do with where the holidays fell. The last thing that we want to do is send a bill or have a bill due on a holiday. That's the last thing a customer wants, is to have to deal with a bill payment on a holiday. So, longer billing cycle in December. The next reason is around our natural gas choice program. We are receiving phone calls from customers thinking that we are their natural gas provider when in fact they are a part of the choice program. And we're referring these customers to call their providers because a majority of these customers are paying more. Those who are exercising their use to be on choice are paying more. In some instances, it's 3 times as more because Consumers Energy is the lowest cost provider for natural gas in the state. The next reason is around a program called Customer Choose Your Due Date. This is a program, it's a new program, and actually we stood this up based on customer feedback. A lot of customers want to be able to select the date that their bill is due. And so with this new program, the first month that you sign up, if you select a due date because it's the day that you get paid or whatever the reason might be, and it's a different date than what you had before, it takes us a month to kind of course correct to get you on that new schedule. So for some customers, those that we've heard from recently, it's a longer billing cycle for them. But by and large, this is a very popular program, and we're seeing a lot of people participating. So I don't want to leave here with the impression that these are just the reasons why. I want to share with you the things that we're doing for our customers to help them. The first is meter testing. And so we've heard a lot about smart meters today. For those that have concerns about the accuracy of their meters, we want to assure everyone that they are certified by the American National Standards Institute and the Underwriters Laboratory. We test every single meter that goes on a customer's home or on a customer's business. And for those that have questions, we would be more than happy to send one of our colleagues out to show you how they're tested or to check your meter. We want to be able to do that. You just have to call us. We're one phone call away. The next is around program assistance. So let me share with you, in January, Consumers Energy, we donated $10 million to local agencies, 7 local agencies across this state, to help with program assistance. Starting this month and into next month, we will be participating in 30 Walks for Warmth. And these are great, this is a great opportunity. A lot of elected officials, perhaps some of you here on the committee, are participating in this with the intent of raising $300,000 that will go directly back to help our customers. We also offer a program called CARE. This is a unique program. It's a 2-year payment plan where we offer bill credits, we offer payment rewards, and catch-up assistance for those customers who qualify. We also have, just a couple weeks ago, have rolled out additional flexibility and enhancements to our billing installment program, which is a solution for customers. The next is our budget plan. Our budget plan helps prevent bill fluctuations, and so this, over a 12-month period, you can count on a consistent amount versus fluctuations that you might see given weather. That's an offer, or that's a program that we offer to our customers. As I mentioned, energy efficiency programs. We promote these programs year-round. My team is working on them, and that is definitely a solution for our customers that we encourage them to participate in. We have several other programs, our Interval Web Portal, our Pay-As-You-Go program. There's several lists, but my point here is to tell you that we get it. We understand what our customers are going through. We're in it with them. We care for our customers, and we want to help solve these issues that they're facing. We're a phone call away, and we want to solve this on a case-by-case basis because we do care for our customers. So with that, my colleague Amy Walt and I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Amy, Ms. Waltz, you going to have any statement?
No, I'm just
here
for questions.
Okay. Representative Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for coming in and sharing your thoughts with us. I did a little bit of just Google research while you were talking about cold weather, and I think in Michigan it's well established that we get cold weather. I mean, that's not a surprise to folks, as best I can tell. In fact, on February 20th of 2015, we set a record in some parts of Michigan of minus 39 degrees. And that was notable because it was only 5 degrees warmer than the North Pole at that very same day. So I think, we've had some very hard winters the last 3 or 4 years in Michigan. And I guess I don't understand why, if people didn't object strongly with the passion that we're feeling and the passion that you're seeing and the volume of people having such deep concern when we had minus 39 degrees in Michigan, why are they so outraged when it's 9 degrees? And perhaps it's the duration. I would suggest that's part of it, but it's also you know, we had really, really cold winters just as recently as 2 or 3 years ago. So why is this year different than that, as far as why their bills would be so different than, say, 3 years ago were? Because I would argue the winter was equally harsh or maybe worse 3 years ago.
This is our worst winter in the last 10 years. And I would say we, like I mentioned, we're actually seeing less customers contact around concerns. But that's what I'm saying. For those that have concerns, those are here that are here today, we want to help solve this. We have 2 representatives from our contact center here to help. And we want to help work on a case-by-case basis because it has been a bitter cold winter.
And wouldn't you agree, though, that we've had really bitter cold winters as recently as 2015, 2014? I mean, the term polar vortex.
And this is colder, yes.
To the best of my knowledge, the term polar vortex kind of came about in like 3 years ago. I hadn't heard that term used before. Now it's certainly, anybody can call it whatever they want. It's called cold weather. But it seems to me, just in my own experience of, you know, being in office these last 3 years, the concern level has gone substantially up this year versus years past, where I would say it's been within the same ballpark of the same type of cold, or maybe even worse in certain circumstances. I mean, minus 39 degrees is the coldest I've seen it get in Michigan.
Yeah.
So I would just say from our experience, what we've seen is actually we really do care for our customers, and we want to make sure that we're reviewing every single customer issue that's coming through our contact center, or if they file any complaints with us. But we actually are seeing less customer calls into our contact center this year. We're seeing less complaints year over year from our customers. So I do agree with you. It's not as significant as what we have seen in the past. I think there is a lot of attention on the issue. There are some customers that are definitely feeling some concerns around the issues, and we want to make sure that we're working with them directly and making sure that we can address their concerns. But when we look at our overall population of our customers, we are actually seeing less phone calls into our contact center and less complaints into the Michigan Public Service Commission.
This is just anecdotal evidence. While we were taking testimony today, I went ahead and signed up for the Consumers Energy online system. It took me a few tries to get through because it gave me an error twice. But my wife and I just moved out of our house. We moved to a new home back in November. We had our house for sale. It was vacant, hopefully closing in the next couple of weeks here. And so for the month of December and January, the house was completely vacant.
No charge for that free plug.
Yeah. It's a 1,400 square foot house. It was built, 2004, I think. So it's not like a 1902 house that, you can't seal up or anything. We had a $135 bill for the month of January this year. We had our furnace just set at 58 degrees so the pipes wouldn't freeze, and, that the house would stay presentable for people who wanted to come through and look at it. My natural gas bill for the month of January this year was actually more than it was in February of last year when we were living in the home, and was roughly equal to what we had for natural gas use in January of last year. Now, I can understand the difference perhaps in how cold the winter was and other things, but if the home is vacant and set well below what the comfortable temperature would be at, 58 degrees. I set my house at closer to 70 degrees normally. Is that normal, would you say, or is that something that is abnormal for a customer's experience?
So I totally get the frustration. I would suggest it's abnormal, and that we should take, I would be more than happy to look at, let's take more time to look at your specific scenario and get our experts involved to really understand why there is a difference.
And, I did, to the best of my knowledge, last year I did not have a smart meter until sometime last spring or over the summer. So I do have a smart meter on the home. I didn't opt out of anything. I'm not saying conclusively that that's the cause, but it does give me question as to whether or not, just again, this is anecdotally of my own experience in a home that we haven't lived in. It's had 3 LED bulbs running to, make it look, someone drove by, they wouldn't think it was an empty home, for example, and then the furnace is running at 58 degrees with natural gas. So it was just a question I had. And then you brought up the meter testing. The gentleman before you brought up that he had concerns about the validation of that. If you were to go out to a home and basically validate someone's meter with the same evidence that I guess caused you to install it in the first place, why would it change? Like, if you were to come to my house and run the same test that you used to determine the meter was valid in the first place, and you say that my usage is abnormal, what would your test show this time that it didn't show the first time?
So we did, we've put out into the media that we're willing to test anyone's meter who contacts us. And so in the month.
But you test them before you install them, you said, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay,
And
so
if
why would the
customers
test
have a
change?
concern, we'd be glad to go out and test again. So we just recently tested 33 meters, and 30 of those meters came back perfectly normal. 3 of those meters, actually, we found issues on the wiring side of the customers. So we've given that feedback to the customer to say that there's a wiring issue on their side. So there could be some situations that have changed in the home since the time of the installation, and that's something that our meter test is able to discern as to whether the accuracy of the meter is there.
Have you ever found a meter that was a faulty meter on the part of Consumers Energy, like meaning not the electronic infrastructure of the home, but the meter itself was misreading the usage in the home?
I don't have that information. I don't believe so.
So over the 7 million smart meters that you have out there, not one of them has been found to be inaccurate?
They have been, obviously we test them before we install them. So we have had pockets of meters that were inaccurate that we've actually
Sure.
sent back to the manufacturer before they were ever installed. But once they're installed, I'm not aware. We can double check our data. We have all of that. But I'm not aware of any data that's been a meter test after it's been installed where we've actually found an issue because we do such rigorous testing before it was ever installed. There's certainly examples that we can say we've actually sent back full shipments of meters where we found that the our testing was not sufficient and we've sent them back to the manufacturer. But nothing that I'm aware of after the meter has been installed.
Okay.
But we can validate that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. Ladies, I want to offer an alternative theory, and I have no evidence of this at all, but I've pondered this in terms of my own experience. After about 3 months as a member of the legislature, I said to my staff, where's all the correspondence? Because I imagined, we'd get hundreds of constituent contacts, and we'd be after generating responses, et cetera. And I was surprised that there was very little. There remains very little after 3 years, very little constituent contact. And my question that I pondered was, is it because people have lost faith in contacting government? And similarly, you say you've got a reduced number of complaints while Facebook and new media outlets, Facebook, television stories, the one reporter said on one that we showed a few minutes ago, hundreds of people had contacted a station. If you go to these Facebook posts, hundreds of different people posting pictures of their bills. So I offer the alternative possibility that maybe they're using alternate ways of expressing their frustration because they feel helpless and have not had the glowing experience in contacting customer service that, of course, you would want us to believe is the case, and maybe you even believe is the case, but I'm hearing differently from others. So the fact that you have fewer complaints may not necessarily be a reflection of the fact that there's less concern, but perhaps less faith in that calling you will make any difference. Thus, we get contacted by media outlets. We get hammered on Facebook because they're coming to us to hold you accountable. If you were any other kind of business model, your customer base would hold you accountable by taking their business somewhere else. But, of course, they're not able to do that, and they come to us instead. Representative LaFave.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you coming and testifying before us today. Of course, this is a really important issue, and we've got to get to the bottom of this. I recently purchased a home, and I've got a smart thermostat in my living room. And I didn't really know before, but apparently you can set it to on, auto, circulate, or off for the fan. So I'm wondering, even if I'm from the Upper Peninsula, so we're used to the cold temperatures, but this place down around here, for a couple months I had the thing on to get all the 1911 air out of the smells out of the place. That was actually really nice. That's why I got rid of the boiler. But even if it was UP weather down here, as long as I have the furnace on, meaning that the fan is constantly running whether or not the natural gas is heating it, shouldn't it be the same amount of electricity as long as I'm not doing the intermittent fan, no matter how cold it gets?
So I'm not the expert of all the mechanics, but there's still a blower component that has to blow it throughout your home. So the fan is one component, but there's also a component that once your furnace is warming up, that there needs to be the blower component that pushes the heat throughout all the different home, rooms within your home. But I am clearly no expert in that particular case, so we can. Again, that's one of the reasons why we have experts that can come to your home and do energy efficiency audits. They can actually see how your home is operating and give you suggestions and ideas for insulation, for window trimmings, things like that, that they can notice in your home where you might be losing energy.
But as long as I'm on a natural gas furnace, it shouldn't matter how cold it is outside, right?
Your natural gas furnace would still need electricity to blow the heat throughout the different rooms of your home.
Approximately how much money do you think it would cost the average consumer to blow heat throughout their home literally 24/7 or intermittently? I mean, how much is this blower costing me? I was told it was, I just bought it. It's a brand new furnace. I was told it was a really energy efficient furnace. How much electricity is my fan and my furnace using?
Yeah, I think it depends on your home, the size of your home, how big your home is, how many rooms you have.
80,000 BTUs.
So, we'd have
size.
to do those calculations for you, and we have models that can do that. I don't have that here with me today, but we can definitely do that.
Sorry, I don't mean to grill you guys
No,
on
that's
it.
okay.
I
We're
appreciate
glad to
it.
answer questions,
Okay.
yeah, because I'm
Thank you
sure
so
others
much.
have questions just like you, so we'd love to do that.
Liaison, to be sure that we get, at least give you an opportunity to answer some questions that have been raised by those who have testified. I was glad to hear you talk about the billing cycle. I know some people have complained, they were aware of the billing cycle, the extended billing cycle, 35 days, and their perception of its timing was that it hit them at apparently exactly the opposite your intent. You were trying to be sensitive to the holidays, and their perception was they got hit in the holidays with a 35-day billing cycle. I don't know how you adjust that, but that's part of the complaints that I've heard, is that maybe you can public opinion surveys of your own customers as when it would be least intrusive. And how should we, not being experts at the technical side of it, what should we take from, for example, 2 stories by WJR-TV, the one about Worth Township that said they got a bill for $10,000. There was a TV story and the bill was reduced to $200. Presumably there must have been some kind of error. And then also the story about the gentleman in Sanford who was tracking his electricity use and saw the dramatic drop-off, as indicated by your own graph, after service personnel had been to his home. What should we gather from those types of anecdotal experiences? I'll leave it at that.
I would just say the first situation, the $10,000 bill, I'm not as familiar with those details, and we can get those back for you. The situation of the customer in Sanford, we have worked with that customer. As he mentioned, we've been out to the home. We've reviewed the usage with that customer. When you look at the bill that you see on the screen there, it's not a 1 month's worth of usage in that bill that is being shown on the screen.
Right.
So
Yeah, the story said it was $700 1 month. After being typically $250, it went up $700 the next month, and the following month $1,000.
Yeah, that 700 and that 1,000 are not for 1 month. Those are bills that have been accumulating over time. So that's not a 1 month worth of usage bill that we've been working with him on. And so based on what we've seen through our analysis, his meter has been tested. It's been accurate. When we look at his usage compared to previous years, it all appears to be in line. We are doing an energy efficiency audit in his home to be able to help give him any suggestions or ideas about how to save money. We've also made him aware of a lot of the programs that Lauren has mentioned that we are able to help our customers with. So we are working with him through his situation, but I feel like, just so you're aware, that's not a 1 month usage that you saw.
But I'm not even concerned about the amount so much as what, at least as he portrayed it. Now, maybe it's not accurate. Maybe he's trying to mislead us, and maybe WJRT is trying to mislead us. But on the assumption that it's accurate, as WJRT portrayed in their story, him looking at your website to track his usage, and at the point at which your technicians visited him, it suddenly drops from these high bars down to this. So what, is there some explanation for that other than that there was some kind of error?
Yeah, we would have to look specifically at his section, but we've looked at his usage over the past 2 years, and there's no anomalies to his usage. We've looked at that. I mean, there can be, depending on what time frame he actually had that up on his screen, whether it's at night or during the day or what the time frame was, I'm not sure on what he had on the screen, but I know our analysts have interviewed him, talked to him, looked at his usage year over year, and his usage is completely in line with what we'd anticipate, as well as we've checked his meter and are going to try to help him get his usage down. We really want to make sure that our customers' perceptions, that we're hearing those so that we can help. And if there's things that are confusing on the website when he potentially is looking at that, like how can we make that better? And that's really, Lauren's team is 100% dedicated to looking at how do we improve our website, how do we make the information that's out there, how do we make it easier? Sometimes those graphs can be a little confusing to understand, and you got your gas and your electric usage, on different graphs, and so it's really something that we strive for, making sure that we can educate our customers how to read it, and then we can also make sure that we are making it easier and more user-friendly, because we know sometimes our business can be a little complicated, and so it is our jobs to make that a little easier for our customers. So definitely something that we're working through with the customer in Sanford.
Well, his contention, and as the TV story portrayed it, accurately or not, was that dramatic drop-off was the point at which your technicians had last visited him. So, I mean, that's the impression we're left with. If there's some indication based on the evidence otherwise, it'd be nice to have that. What should we tell the gentleman who testified today about his having taken advantage of the Consumers Energy self-reading program? I know you advertise it on your website. You sent him cards, a business reply envelope, and he says he is participating in the self-reading program. I would think the customer would assume that would save them a meter reading charge, but he's still being charged the meter reading charge. So what would you tell that gentleman who's still here, I believe?
So we, as we've deployed smart meters across the state, we have obviously customers who have chosen to not want to have a smart meter deployed in their home. And so we've offered them to have that option. And then we've also offered that if you have a meter that's inaccessible, or that we would need to go into your basement to read that meter, we allow them to actually fill out the card, as the gentleman spoke about. So we have went to the commission about customers who've chosen to opt out of our smart meter program, and we've been authorized to charge this fee to customers. And what we have found with our postcard program is there are some customers who are very diligent and do a good job of filling out the postcard every month. We're obligated to get an actual read every month from that meter in order to have an accurate bill. There's not always the compliance to that program 100%. So we do need to have meter readers on staff and available to be able to go out and read those meters when we don't get the postcard or we don't have the postcard. There's also customers who have opted into that program. We still have to validate those reads. We still have to true up those reads to make sure that we're getting accurate reads from our customers. And so we are committed from our order from the commission to do annual true-ups on those meters. So we still need staff. We still need people to be able to do that. So the fee that has been authorized from the Michigan Public Service Commission to charge to anyone who's opted out is really for those costs that we continue to have on staff to accommodate those who have decided to opt out, and making sure that those who've opted out are paying for that fee.
But you levy that against those who self-read, even if they dutifully do it correctly every month, you still charge them.
We do, because we don't know who's going to dutifully do that every single one of the months versus those who may or may not. So it's really a fee that we use to spread those costs across the opt-out customers.
Is it the PSC that requires you to charge it even to those who faithfully and correctly do it?
That is correct.
So
That's
you don't
part
have
of
the option of only charging those who screw up once in a while.
That's correct. That's part of the order.
So that would be something we could address with the PSC, for example.
Potentially, yes.
Okay.
That's part of the order.
And finally, the final question that I have is the gentleman who said that the real-time data was available to him on primary customers but not secondary. Is that just a matter of policy? Could you make that available to all customers for their energy optimization planning?
I'm not aware of that one.
Yeah, we'll have to follow up on that one.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll follow up.
Representative Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation here and answering some of the questions here before committee today. So if one of my constituents had a question on energy assessment and what was going on in their homes with energy usage, who would they contact and how would they get a hold of you?
Well, you can give them my name and number, and we will follow up. Otherwise, we have, as I mentioned, 2 coworkers here who could follow up as well.
But just
In general,
in general, if I may, Mr.
It's our 1-800 number, 1-800-477-5050, or you can also reach us through our digital channel, consumersenergy.com.
Okay, thank you.
Ladies, if you would stand by, if you'll stay there, because we've got a few more questions for you if we can get them in. But because they traveled some distance, I think Doug and Louisa Westendorp, dairy farmer, if you would like to. And sir, we're down to, if you can, keep your testimony to 2 or 3 minutes. And ladies, you could stay right there because we have some other questions. If these folks are quick, we'll allow time for the additional questions for you. Press the red button in front of you, please, and proceed.
Okay, good morning and thank you for your time. We are in Berry County and we did call to find out what happened to our bill. Last month, I will just lift up the graph so that you guys are able to see the increase in our dairy farm. And we also have 3 other bills with consumers from either our residents. The farm also has another one that carries the consumer's bill, as you can see. So we were increased from our January bill of a little over $2,000 to the last month of $5,864.
And this happened after we changed out some lights. We put in a bunch of LED lights, and we changed some other equipment, so we actually have one less 5-horsepower motor running 24 hours a day.
I called the consumer's number and was told that it was because of the cold temperatures, which I totally get, and also the 5-day increase, which I get. But in our dairy barns, we do not heat the barns. The cows produce their own heat, so that has really nothing to do with heat. The 5 days, I took them off, and again, we are more than double than any other month that we've had this year or any other year. My biggest question or concern would be today, do I pay the full amount, or are they going to return a call and let us know what to do, or they can explain the situation that we are in? We are talking about $4,000 more than our prior months. Again, our house increased, the other business increased. I get it. It was 5 more days. That makes total sense. Increase also because of the homes and the other business that needed heat. But there's got to be an explanation, and not, we'll get back with you, because they have not yet gotten back with us.
Well, Ms. Westendorf, if you've accomplished nothing else today, I believe you'll probably get personal attention from a Vice President of Consumers Energy in about 5 minutes. And you're saying, just so I'm clear, you had the $3,000 increase on a barn you don't heat?
That is correct.
There's some, the robot rooms where we milk are heated, but the barn where the cows are is not heated.
So we understand an increase. I'm not here to try to say we don't understand. We are here to understand why it would be more than doubled.
Okay. Any questions for the Westendorps?
The major part of the heat is even propane. And to answer your question on your fan motor, our house is a 2,400 square foot house. It has a 1.6 horsepower fan blowing the air. Okay, it just takes a couple of amps. It's not gonna increase the bill very much.
Okay, Representative and ladies, Representative Lauer has a question, and our time is short.
Okay, mine was going all the way back to the Sanford situation. I was just curious. He had mentioned in the news report that he wasn't paying an electric bill at this point in time. Could you explain to me why that would be the case? Was it had to do with an error, or what would that? Why is that?
As we've been working through an investigation with the customer, we've put a hold on his account so that we could work through his situation with him. So we've asked him to, or we've let him know that his account's on hold. He won't be at risk of disconnect while we work through this situation with him.
You bet. And Representative Riley.
Thank you. Yeah, I just had a couple questions actually about the testing and the durability testing on the meters. So you made it sound like this is done out-house. You do not do any of the testing in-house?
The meters are actually tested from our vendor, Itron, who we buy them from, and then once they get to our facility, we also test them within our meter facility.
So you do have a facility where you can do durability testing, weather conditions, all those kinds of things?
We do, and we've actually invited the news media in, and they've actually viewed our testing facility. We've had that on the media in the past.
And in your durability testing, where have you seen any concerns with the meter? I mean, I know you talked to Representative Barrett, and when you mentioned the number of people, he was surprised at how so few meters had any issues, which I agree with. Have you had issues with any meters, and what have been the major concerns with them?
The ones I'm aware of, and we can get you more information around our overall testing program, but the 33 that we actually tested based on customer requests just here in the last month based on high bill concerns, 30 of them have tested completely normal. The other 3 have came back with some wiring issues on the customer side, so meter also testing accurate. So all 33 that we tested have been accurate.
I'm talking more about durability testing of meters. Don't you test not large masses of meters on a durability cycle? Cold weather, hot weather, and in those situations, where have you saw the, do you do that?
Representative Riley, forgive me, and ladies, if you would answer his question once the committee is adjourned. Vice Chair Lisinski makes a motion to excuse absent members without objection, so ordered. The House Energy Policy Committee is adjourned.
So yeah, I think you can continue, yeah.
You're saying